Hey guys, it's Mama.
It's Yahk.
And we're doing a little something different. We're going to kind of do a few here and there about mental health and just kind of trying to raise awareness because it's a pretty big deal for both of us. I've already shared my story in last week's video, and so I figured we should bring Yahk in and let him share as much or as little as he wants to of his. And then we're going to discuss, just mental health in the workplace and all that fun goody stuff that comes with it.
Jeez, swear.
I want this to be a free space where people can come and talk about it.
But
I don't want you to feel like you're forced to say anything. So if you're not comfortable sharing it, don't share anything you're uncomfortable with, however many people watch this video.
I did come from what people call a rough background.
Okay.
Mostly because we weren't in the best neighborhood. There was a lot of killing going on, a lot of stealing. Obviously, I saw dead bodies. Obviously, I've been jumped. I wasn't around the most healthy people, but it wasn't all my family's fault. It was just kind of the area we was in, and we did what we had with the cards we had. Because of that, I witnessed a lot of things that I believe a child around my age would not witness.
Some of the things that you talked about, I've never experienced.
Yeah.
Outside of, watching it on TV.
I don't like to talk myself like I've been through more than most people. There are plenty of people in this world who have been through much worse than me.
Isn't that kind of... I agree that you shouldn't go into it with that mentality, but at the same time, don't devalue the things that you have been through. You know what? It might be common where you're from, but it's not common across the country or across the world. So, it's important to make sure that you do acknowledge that you've been through things that people haven't been through. Everybody's been through things that people haven't been through. But I don't ever want you to feel like it's not important that you went through what you went through. You went through a lot.
I'll say that, there have been traumatic points, and I don't put any blame on anybody. It's mostly due to the area I was in. I don't even blame that on my mother, because it's not easy to get out of that neighborhood.
Yeah, no, you can't help where you live.
And I could tell she was trying, and she was a young mother at the time. Due to that, now that I can look back, and they always say hindsight's 20/20, that I can see marks that it has left. Now I try my absolute best to make sure that they are not excuses. I don't want them to be excuses. Occasionally they do flare back up, and you can see where I came from and the way that I act, but I try not to be like that. I have a certain level of, I feel like, empathy.
Yeah.
That no matter what someone has been through, most of the time, I won't say all of the time, because I can't empathize with a soldier that's been in the field and watched his friends die and got his leg blown off. I can try. I can understand it, because I've known people who it's happened to. So I have this level of understanding what's going on in someone's head, and for the most part, what path it will take them down.
I feel like everyone has maybe because I am an empath, I tend to think that everybody can kind of empathize. But I think the biggest part here is making sure that everyone realizes there is a difference between sympathizing and empathizing with somebody. Sympathizing is like, oh, I feel bad for you. Whereas empathizing is, I feel you. I can kind of understand where you're coming from. It's more of a group thing rather than singling somebody out.
Which is funny, because I do everything I can to avoid sympathizing. I don't like the feeling when someone does it to me.
Oh, I agree. I'm the same way.
So, yeah, I know some people want it. They want someone to feel sorry for them.
There's all kinds of people out there. So, other than empathy, what do you think? How do you think your time growing up has changed the way you view the world? I guess is the important part.
In the beginning of my life, it made me actually very hostile and defensive towards the world. Because
that's how you survive.
Yeah, It wasn't. Well, I've been jumped, but also I've seen my mother in very
not pleasant,
compromising positions, and I don't mean sexually. I'm talking like people laying hands on her, and that does leave a mark on you because it makes you want to protect her, but it also kind of makes you want to protect yourself. Because you're like, if there's people out there like that, and I'm not strong enough to defend against them. So it made me very, like, at first, very kind of like, I want to get out of the fight as fast as possible. So I was very, like, passive and hurried up and just wiggled my way through it.
Yeah.
But then it started turning into, especially after my father figure came around, and I started seeing what a man actually looks like when he's defending himself. It made me very defensive, and it made me quick to snap. Alright, I'm done. If you keep talking that crap, you're getting slugged.
Yeah.
Instantly. I grew out of that. But that's just because I realized how immature it was making me look. And it was starting to spread to my brothers and sisters. It has affected me up to this point. I don't like it when I lose control. So I almost never do it. I never lose my temper. And if I ever do lose my temper, I make sure that all of my anger is pointed at something that I can't break. And to be honest, I do everything I can.
Someone.
And it's never pointed at a person. I will never point it at a person. I avoid verbally saying anything to them. Most of the time I will go somewhere, think, or if I'm angry in the moment and there's nowhere for me to go, I'll take a second, take a breath, and try to talk out the situation. But if I reach that limit, if I reach that point where like I can't talk anymore, and normally I'll just have an anxiety attack. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
I'll start breathing really hard, start getting really angry. You'll start seeing me tear up. Don't take that as a sign of weakness. I promise you, if you start making fun of somebody like that, it might get you hit. So, most of the time I just have an anxiety attack. If it really hits that level, but it never has, I think I can only think of maybe 2, maybe 3 times it's ever happened to me in my life. Other than that, it's mostly calm down and talk. If you can just get your emotions out, say how you feel, and try to listen to the other person despite the emotions that you're feeling. Even if you're madly pissed in the moment, hold yourself back and listen. Because if you act off right then and there, let your anger take control of you right then and there, you might break something or hurt somebody, and all they were trying to do is help you.
Yeah, and say something that you can't take back. I feel like that's a huge issue.
Yeah, that's the best way to sum it up. It taught me control myself. Have self-control. Don't ever let yourself go over that line. No.
Okay, so now last week I did go over basically my my time in the mental health hospital. And I guess my question to you is, do you have a similar story? Is there something? Do you want to discuss something like?
Oh no, I can. Yeah. I have something similar. I was never put into a mental health hospital, so I don't even know how that feels.
It's an experience.
But I've been in a lot of counseling. I bet that it is an experience. So.
So, we're trying to kind of focus on mental health in the workplace, right? So, do you have any kind of stories or anything? Especially being Navy, being enlisted, it's actually listed as like the first or second. It's one of the top 5 most stressful jobs in the world. Not just in the country, but in the world. And it's U.S. enlisted military. And so, especially, you were, 19, 20 when you got to Japan? No, I think you were 20 or 21, because the first birthday that I celebrated with you, you turned 22. So, I guess being that young and being that far away from your family for the first time, really. It was the first time you've ever really been away from your family for that long.
Yeah.
At least your mom and your siblings.
Yeah.
So how did that affect you mentally?
That's a story. At first, I didn't know how to react. It felt weird not having your family within arm's reach, even though I had moved out. It was still weird not having them within arm's reach. But the thing is I had
like just a quick walk up the road, or like, hey, come and visit me, and it'd take less than 30 minutes. You know what I mean?
I was never the type to tell them to visit me. I was a very distant person, but that plate of support that's usually under you, it felt like it got pulled out because the military wants you to grow up and act like an adult. Yeah. And they want you to do it fast.
They want you to do it now, and how. And it's not even that they want you to be an adult. They want you to be an adult their way.
And I will say this: not every branch is like that. I feel like it's only the Navy and Air Force that are like that, where they force you to be independent and think for yourself and act like an adult. Because once you, like, if you're a Marine, you're being treated like a child. If you're an Army, you're being treated like a child. They treat you like a child the whole way through until you start hitting them high ranks, and they're like, all right, we can trust you to be a man now.
Well, you have to think about it too. Like, okay, I feel like I need to put a disclaimer. I personally have never actually served. I have spent a lot of time around them, being married to a Navy guy for almost a decade, and then dealing with you, I have different views that I can see from the spouse's point of view, and all of the things that we deal with, and our own mental health issues that we get with being a Navy spouse, which is a whole other thing. But at the same time, from what I have noticed, is the Marines are very, that's my brother.
Yes.
Versus, ha, I have to beat you.
Competitive.
Especially,
versus,
especially, I mean, obviously people like the Navy SEALs, like things like those, they're still more of a team because they have to be.
Forced and camaraderie.
That's the only way that they function correctly, is if they can rely on the person next to them. Whereas in the Navy, it's in the rest of the Navy, all the other rates and things, it's not like that. It's very
competitive.
It is. It's extremely competitive, and I mean, there's a reason that there are so many Blue Falcons in the Navy.
If y'all don't know what that means,
so a Blue Falcon is basically somebody who puts their own needs above that of their coworkers and does basically whatever they can to then put that coworker and throw them under the bus.
Just so it makes them look better.
So that they look good. They can be like, see, this person is doing something crappy. Hey, we should get him out of the way so that I can take his spot. And look at me, I'm so cool. That's basically what a Blue Falcon is. So what is something... So, okay, so you get to Japan, right? Was it easy to make friends?
No. I didn't have friends in Japan for a long time. I didn't actually start making friends until I got into a D&D group.
Okay.
And that was...
How long after you got to Japan did that take?
About 6 months.
Gotcha. Okay. So then, what did you do before then? Like, how did that affect you mentally?
I played games. Sat in my room, looked at YouTube. Just did a lot of crap to distract me from it. I mean, eventually it starts to bother you that no one wants to hang. No one wants to talk to you.
There's nobody that you can talk to go to. Yeah. I've been there.
Eventually I did have my LPO who trusted me for the most part. He was the one guy in that time period that I trusted. And to be honest, I didn't know how. I'm slow to learn. I'm not very good at adapting. And whenever I mess up, I immediately want to cover up, especially when you're in the Navy, because you expect,
yeah, you're expected to instantly be an adult.
And they come down hard on you if you mess up. So I did a lot of, like, trying to make sure I was perfect, and I wasn't doing a very good job. But he was doing a lot of helping me and supporting me, and it felt like he knew where I was coming from because he came from just as dark of a past.
Gotcha. So I'm assuming having a coworker or friend even at that point to China, I mean, was he like someone that you would go to when you're like having mental issues?
Yeah, I've cried in front of him a lot. Eventually it got to the point where one of my biggest issues was showing. I am horrible when it comes to my sleep issues and punctuality.
I can attest that.
In military, it's very serious.
That's an important
when it comes
issue.
To your punctuality. Yeah. You need to be at the place at which the time they said it. As a matter of fact, be there 15 minutes before the time they said it.
Yeah.
It's called the 15-minute rule. It's a legit thing in the military. If you ain't there 15 minutes early, you're late.
Unfortunately.
So I had a problem with my punctuality, and no matter how much I tried to fix it, for some reason I couldn't fix it. I would try fixing my sleep schedule, getting a whole bunch of different alarms. I even like cut out all forms of entertainment for myself and cleared out my room so nothing was keeping me up. I would go home, I would go to sleep, I'd go to work, but it was making me depressed.
Well, yeah, I mean, even some kind of stimulus helps you to just declutter your mind at the very least. I mean, that's why my thing is when I get home, I have a Sudoku game that I play because it relaxes me, it calms me, it gives me a minute to just kind of decompress from everything that I've done, especially because when I'm usually getting home, it's super early in the morning or super late at night, just depending on if I'm doing my 6 or 8 hour shift. And so it's important. I mean, not having anything and just doing work, sleep. I feel like that would burn you out.
Oh, I'm very burnt out, even now. So, after so long of doing that, and I was starting to get burnt out, even though it was just 6 months in. And it's weird because I felt like I had an easy job, but we're not going to go into that. My job was very easy. I worked in optometry. Just looked at people's eyes all day.
Yeah. Yeah, but you still had to be there, I mean, somewhat early, and you were there dealing with people. People are not easy to deal with.
But eventually...
Especially dependents. Let's be honest.
It started becoming a pattern that I was messing up. And he was still helping me and watching my back. And it was one more time, after a long time of me not really messing up, but then I messed up again. And then he wanted to know what was wrong. But I'm going to be honest, I couldn't remember what happened that morning. I knew I woke up, but I felt like I went back to sleep. But I don't remember going back to sleep. It was like I would sit there, like, you know when you're like super duper sad, and your brain just goes into that like static mode? Yeah. That's where I was at. I had gotten up, and I was just in static. I didn't want to move. I was just sitting there. And I was late to work. I didn't care. I was just sitting there. And then I finally got up, and I was like, I need to go. And I got to work, and then he pulls me in and is asking me what's wrong. And I didn't want to tell him that was what was wrong, even though he had been helping me out through all the other crap. Yeah. Like, my brother had went into a coma during that time. He was in a septic coma, and that crap was messing with me and making me really upset. But after all that had went over, for some reason my head was just in this fog, this static, and I didn't tell him what I was doing, and he realized that I was lying to him because he seems to be pretty good at that. Yeah. And that's when he stopped helping me, and I regret that because I lied to him. He noticed it, never helped me again. And then when he was on his way out, a new LPO came in. And before he left, he said, I can tell that you're having problems. I can basically see that something's really bothering you. And he had been telling me from the beginning that I need to go to mental health. But I had been avoiding going to mental health because it doesn't look good. It's at least...
especially being in the military. Like, it's one thing... It's one thing, like, most jobs these days... Especially these days, they're okay with it. Well, mostly. they kind of have to be. I feel like a lot more places are opening up to that and being more understanding of it, especially as younger people come into positions of power. It's definitely a generation thing. It's really a culture thing too. Like, I mean, in the Black community, going to counseling or any kind of therapy, how is that seen?
Well, I mean, I'm gonna be honest. It depends on the community, but the community that I would say I was around, that they would just probably think that you were kind of like
a punk.
Kind of a punk, yeah. Like, oh, this dude, he's a crybaby, or there's something wrong with that guy. Like, if there's something legit wrong with you, they're just gonna be like, there's something wrong with that guy, stay away from him.
Yeah.
And they would be like a little overprotective about it. When that's not how you fix it at all. If anything, you need to talk to him. Yeah. You need to figure out what's going on in his head. Let him vent.
I mean, and that's the thing is, like, a lot of people, mental health is so, even still now, it's so taboo that if you bring it up, people are like, wait, hold up. Like, I don't know how to handle this. It makes people, I get it makes people uncomfortable. But I think, again, the only way to really get over that is to talk about it more. Yeah. And to make it more, I guess, prevalent and less taboo. Because the less taboo something is, the more you talk about it, the more common it becomes, the easier it is to deal with it. So you met some friends, right? You got your D&D group. You had some people that you could hang around. How did that affect your mental health? Did it help?
It made outside of work a lot more bearable.
That's good. What about
inside of work? Got worse.
Okay.
So finally got me some friends. Finally relaxed. Had me some people who would take me out, and I'd like go like skiing. Like, they came up with ski groups. They were doing paintball, a lot of paintballing. They would just do things to make you go out in Japan and hang out with Japan and bring in new sailors. And I became one of the people who was the founders of the group. So all I had to do was go out and find more people to do it with. Yeah. Eventually I stopped hanging with them because they started drinking a lot. And I didn't want to be that guy.
Yeah, we're not really drinkers.
So hanging with the D&D group, having my fun. And then I start going to work and I realize that my sleep issues are getting worse again.
Because instead of trying to focus on getting a full set amount of sleep, you're hanging out.
I'm hanging out. And no matter what I do, even if I would start blowing them off so I could get sleep, it would make them angry. But when I get to work, they wouldn't like me because my new LPO at the time knew about my record. He knew about what my problem was, even though it actually had been a while since I had messed up.
So I feel like this is a good place to put in the fact that the biggest part of mental health issues that I've looked at, that I've personally dealt with, that I've had friends and family, people that I've dealt with, a lot of it has to do with your superiors. And if your superiors aren't helpful with you mentally, like you said, you seem to be doing okay when the first LPO was helping you, and then that moment when he stopped, which honestly was the wrong decision to do. Clearly, that's just me. But I understand that you lied, but he also should have seen that there was more going on and been a little bit more patient. That's just how I feel. And I feel like a lot of people these days need to realize that patience is very helpful with mental health. They basically go hand in hand at this point, because you need to have the patience to be there and to help your coworkers, your employees, anybody. You need to have that patience to help them get through it. Because if you're just ragging on them and telling them, hey, why aren't you doing this? Why are you doing this? What's going on? Talk to me. Get right. Do this. Come on, let's go. And all it's going to do is just make it worse. Especially people like us who have anxiety. So I feel like it's important to have good leadership, and that's probably the hardest part of mental health in the workplace is bad leadership.
Agreed.
I mean, I've had the place that I worked at when I was still living in Arizona. There was a certain supervisor who took over for another supervisor, and they made my life a living hell. They would talk about me behind my back. They would make faces at me if I wasn't, like, if I was saying something and I wasn't necessarily facing them, they would make faces behind me to the person who I was talking to. So, like, say you and I were having a conversation and they were behind me listening, the supervisor would make faces to the person who I was talking to. They started, I was never able to prove it, but I'm pretty sure they were messing with my numbers, because I went from exceeding my average being exceeding what I should, to barely making half.
Change of scenery.
Sorry, we had to move things around a little
You're
bit.
You're still on the conversation. It's a triangle.
Yes. But with them, like, again, I can never prove it, but they were messing with my numbers. And, I mean, there were so many times where, I mean, I loved my job in the beginning when I had the first supervisor, but then that second supervisor took over. And heaven forbid I had to make them actually, do their job and actually do paperwork, and they didn't like it. And so, they started making my life literally a living hell. I was crying in the freezer, having anxiety attacks, if not weekly, more, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, just because the way that it worked is Tuesdays was our heavy days. And every supervisor that I talked to outside of that one supervisor said that if it is over a certain amount of pieces, you are required to have help. You need help, because not only am I in charge of getting all this stuff together, and there are people who rely on me to get things done, certain things done at a certain time.
Okay.
Or it messes everything up.
I can understand that.
And so there was usually supposed to be somebody, and not the whole time, but at least the beginning, to make sure that they got me ahead, so that way, basically, I wasn't having to play catch up.
Okay.
They refused to send me help. So the next thing was they literally pulled me off of my job that I was getting paid to do and put me in with the other area, and took someone from that area and put them into my job, because I was the only one who did my job. It was a one-person thing.
Okay.
And so I finally got to the point where I went and talked to my supervisor's supervisor, so my boss's boss. And honestly, from then, it just spiraled. And that was, other than COVID, our oldest wasn't in school anymore. So, like, I didn't have any, I had to be home all the time anyways. It was easier financially for us to move here and have their dad help out, and they could be closer and all of that. And so with COVID, it really made leaving the easier choice, because that person was doing everything that they could to make sure that I wasn't just not happy, I was miserable. So it got to be too much. And that's all because I had a supervisor that didn't care.
I can feel it.
Then this new LPO takes over, right? What does that do mentally for you?
Oh, new LPO. Not saying names.
Not names. We'll have first LPO, new LPO.
Okay, so new LPO had heard about my
sleeping issues?
My sleeping issues and my lack of punctuality. I know it's a problem. I have
We're
been
working on it.
Trust me.
I'm doing my best.
I will gladly take my blame in that. But no, there's no but. I'll take my blame in that. I had my issues when it comes to punctuality, and to be honest, I feel like recently I've been pretty good at it. New LPO. So new LPO, he heard about my record, and I heard he was a new LPO. So this is his first time being LPO, and his first one-on-one words with me. I'm not talking about in a group. Well, it's just me and him in the room. Is I'm tired of your bullshit.
Okay.
And I was like,
you don't even know me, bro.
You don't even know me. You have no idea what's going on with me. And from then on, he was on my ass. Every single small thing that could have gone wrong,
he turned into a big thing.
He turned into a big thing. And now I understand some things, especially in the military, you gotta be perfect. But I'm sorry, some people ain't built like that.
I mean, you're still human.
And I did things to try to make sure I did well. I knew I had sleeping issues. I knew I had punctuality issues. But I knew my job. I could do my job well, and normally I was doing it better than others.
I feel like that's another issue too, is a lot of people, especially old way of thinking, was you need to be perfect, not you need to be reaching for perfect. You need to be already at the progress level, not progressing. And it's an unrealistic standard, to be completely honest.
In the military, I can see why we're supposed to be set above the standard.
Yes, I agree. But there's also being set above the standard, and then there's expecting you to be instantly, again, I don't have any personal experience, so I'm sure there's going to be people who are like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm already admitting it. I 100% agree.
They expect you to be set above the standard, and to be honest, I have no problem admitting my job, especially as a corpsman on shore duty, isn't that hard. Unless you get put in like ER or something like that, where it really messes with your sleep schedule. Yeah. And I feel sorry for those guys.
Go ahead.
LPO, after he does that, starts finding all the small stuff, turning it into big stuff, and they explain, well, it was explained to me at my next command here, well, technically 2 commands after this, that whenever someone sees one thing bad about you and it's seen, it becomes kind of like a known thing.
It's just a domino effect.
That everything else just gets highlighted because they're all looking at you. While other people can do the same thing you're doing and it won't bother them at all because you have this one problem, so everything is a problem.
Yeah.
And that's horrible for somebody who has, especially if they're fighting and know they have a mental health problem and they're trying to fix themselves.
Yeah.
Now they're saying trying to fix yourself is going to mental health and getting seen by a professional. It is not that easy.
It's not, especially in the military, because the military is the only place where doctor-patient confidentiality kind of goes out the window. Because there are certain things
they have to say something.
They have to say something like if it can affect your work ethic, or no, what's the word? Basically, if it affects your mission readiness,
they have to.
They have to say something.
They might not have to say exactly what it is, but they have to say something.
So, especially again, a lot of people try to not seek help.
I avoided seeking help altogether because I just made it into the military, and now all of a sudden I'm seeing mental health. That would have made me look weak as heck. I'm pretty sure someone can understand how I felt.
Yeah. I'm sure there's millions of people out there that can understand. They don't want to look weak.
You don't want to look weak, and you do everything you can to fix yourself, especially when you feel like maybe you're not trying hard enough. So you just keep trying harder, and you keep trying harder. Why? Because you feel like you're not trying hard enough, so you keep climbing it. And now that I know, it was burning the heck out of me. It was destroying me mentally. And I finally went to mental health after my LPO had already had me sent up to be mastered. He was done with me. He was just like, no, basically I want you out of the Navy. And it didn't really help that he went and told all his LPO friends about me. So they would constantly come come around me or pull me in the rooms to yell at me just to up my stress level more. And I'm going to be honest, upping the stress level isn't going to fix me.
That's the exact opposite thing you do. I mean, that's honestly the worst way to handle that is when it comes to mental health, yeah, you want people to know that they can come to you and help out. And
oh, he didn't make that at all.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah.
he made it so that talking to anybody would have
been detrimental.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't trust him whatsoever. I'm gonna be honest.
I wouldn't have trusted him either.
I could have told him. Let's say my brother went into another septic coma. Mm-hmm. If I said that to him, I don't think he'd have gave any fucks. I'm gonna be honest. I have a feeling that he had just seen it as an excuse and been like, so, and helped on my ass again.
I'm really sorry you had to go through that.
And then he mastered me, which is basically the equivalent of, in the military, it's like going to court. Mm-hmm. They send you up and they say whether or not we want to keep you there. The captain didn't actually see that. It didn't seem like he was that angry with me. He was just like, it's a small thing. It's a small problem. Fix it. As a matter of fact, he put me in a situation where it was easily fixed. Where, well, it was kind of messed up, but it was what was needed to fix it up. Is he put me in a room that was completely empty. And all I had in there was my bed, a book, and an alarm clock. And it was one of those old-fashioned bell alarm clocks.
Yeah. That's where that came from.
And he made it to where I had to muster 4 times a day. So I had to make sure I walked up to the front of the hospital and signed my name on a piece of paper to show that I showed up. I was like that for like 3 weeks.
Yeah, it was
about 3 weeks. And for the most part, my schedule had been fixed. I'm gonna be honest, if they had told me to do that, if they told me, yo, wipe everything, alarm clock, do this for this amount of time. Yes, you're gonna have to walk me through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest.
But when I joined, I create a habit.
When I joined, I was a child mentally, and y'all asked me why I joined when I was there, and I said so I could mature. Y'all were just expecting me to mature myself, and that's not how that works.
No.
You gotta walk me through it. Set habits for me to follow. Put a list down so I can follow the list. Not everyone is built and wants the maturity the way y'all want it. Y'all grew up in your parents' house, and the first thing you wanted to do was hurry up and get out. Mm-hmm. That's what I hear a lot of people. They want to hurry up and get out so they can do whatever the heck they want to do. When it came to me, I was kind of scared. I didn't want to leave at all because I felt like the moment I came into the world, I would have immediately failed.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because of my mother. To be honest, she raised me up when it came to like chores and stuff. When she had stuff listed out for me, I did fine. And later on, we find out some other things that's going up here. We'll get to that later.
Yeah.
But I was asking for them. Yes, they didn't want to do it, and they've said these words. We're not going to hold your hand.
Yeah.
I was asking you, just do it for a bit.
Yeah.
Because I have not gotten my footing.
There's a difference between holding your hand and, it's like when you go to the bowling alley. You put up bumpers to kind of keep you in your lane. We're not telling you here, walk you down. You don't walk your ball. No, you're not allowed to. You do throw it, but you give it boundaries.
Give me some boundaries and let me granny throw it.
Yeah.
They wanted me to be a man, and whenever I wasn't being a man, I was getting punished for it. And not everyone learns that way. Some people do.
Many people don't.
I could tell that they were being patient because from what it seemed, a lot of people were getting in trouble for that type of stuff. Mm-hmm. And they were getting in a lot more trouble than me. Okay. So it seemed like they were being very patient with me. But to me, when I would look at that and see that they were getting in more trouble than I was, I felt like it was crazy toxic.
Yeah.
I was just like, no telling why morale is at like a 4 right now. Mm-hmm. And out of the 6-man clink that we have, 4 of us want to kill ourselves. 4 of us are going to mental health because we want to kill ourselves. But yet you're saying, "Oh, mission's going great," but
is it though?
4 of your dudes want to kill themselves.
Yeah. And it's just okay. So you finally go to mental health, right?
I finally go to mental health.
What led up to, like, what was the breaking point for you that finally got you to go to mental health?
To be honest, it was my LPO's words kind of echoing. There was nothing really specific that made me do it. It was me. I messed up a couple more times. It was after the mask, and it was after I went through the thing when it kept me in the room, and I could notice that my sleep schedule was messing up again. And I wasn't playing games. My room was empty. I made sure that when I got put back in my room, that I cleared it out.
Okay.
And people were actually coming to me in the clinic and was just like, "We noticed your room was cleared out. Are you okay?" So
I'm trying to stay okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to stay okay. So when I noticed that my sleeping wasn't happening, turns out it's because I'm getting seen for sleep apnea. I kept waking up. I couldn't breathe in my sleep.
You would stop breathing,
I would
and
stop
it's
breathing,
terrifying.
and it was waking me up. I didn't realize that's what was going on. So now I'm being seen for it. But I realized I was messing up again. So I went to mental health and was just like, "Yo, I'm having sleep issues, and I keep coming in late, and everything I try to do isn't fucking helping." He was just like, "At this point, I'm begging you. You need to go to mental health." Those were the words of the first LPO before he left. It's just like, "You need to go to mental health. That's what you need to do to fix yourself."
So those are the words that were echoing in your head to
Yeah.
basically kind of push you to go.
And he had been saying the whole time that I needed to go. I was avoiding. But eventually, after almost 6 months, going on a year, 6 months, 7, maybe even 8 months, eventually I went after all that crap that started happening to me and all the trouble I was getting in. I went, and the counselor, or whatever he was, psychologist, he was a little different. I'm going to say that.
Good different?
You tell me.
Enjoy.
And his first impression, I'm going to be honest, was horrible. I hated his first impression. Because his first impression, it seemed like he was purely focused on making sure that
I was mission ready.
I was mission ready. And I'm going to be honest, I was at the point I didn't really give a fuck about the mission. I didn't care at all. I was caring about myself. Yes, the mission was important at the time, but I had reached a point where there was no way that you were going to get me mission ready right now. We needed to get me life ready.
Yeah. You need to get me somewhat okay.
Because at this point I was suicidal. At this point I had already came up with plans to off myself. And he knew about that. And he was basically trying to make sure I don't think that way anymore, and make sure I can still do my job. Well, I didn't like that too much. Rubbed me the complete wrong way, even though I felt what was wrong. He got me into this. He gave me this sheet to basically control my sleep patterns, and this weird person I could go to that can help me with my sleep patterns, and to mark whenever I wake up and stuff like that. Didn't really help at all. He was telling me alarms I could do, times I could set to sleep, how I eat. He called it sleep hygiene. I mean, it helped me go to sleep faster, but it did not help me when it was time for me to wake up, or my day when I'm tired as heck and I'm late to everything. So eventually I did go back. I was like, I say a month later, I went back.
Okay. So you only went the once, and then
I went a total of like 2-3 times.
Okay.
The third time was actually a good experience, but then I stopped after that, and then eventually I got sent back. But like the third time, he was. Oh no, I went once. I stopped going. Then I went 2-3 times.
Okay.
So I went the once. I stopped going because I felt like, okay, from what the little he's given me, and from me talking to the chaplain is basically.
Chaplain is a priest, basically, but it depends on the denomination.
Branch of denomination. They are the person that a sailor, a soldier, or a Marine goes to when they're in a very bad mental space, and they fix them up so they can keep doing the mission. They say some inspiring or even religious words to them. They listen to them, and they're usually trained in that type of stuff to make sure you can keep going.
They're basically a religious counselor.
Yeah.
Because they are religious. That is an important thing. They are a chaplain, so they are religious. There are different types of religious chaplains. There's Baptist, there's Catholic, there's all kinds of different denominations. But in essence, that's what they are. They are a pastor, preacher, whatever you want to call it, but in the military.
Chaplain, he helped me out quite a bit. When it came to like me feeling keeping me from offing myself, he did a very good job. Why? Because he made me feel like I was needed, and he made me feel like
you were heard.
Someone was listening. And then things started getting worse again, and I got to the point where I would verbally say where I was at mentally, and I'd said something suicidal out loud, and I was very angry, and I had said it out loud, and I had an ALPO at the time who heard me.
Sorry.
And she had me sent to mental health for it. That's when I got those wise words from my counselor that I did not like, or psychologist that I did not like. He realized where I was at. First of all, he got me out of that mental space. He wanted me not to kill myself, and the way he did that is he found out that it actually had a lot to do with past of my family and how failure would have looked to me in comparison to my family. If I had failed in the military, how I felt my family would have been looking at me.
Gotcha.
And two, he made my book. He brought my book into it because he knew I was writing a book. And he was just like, books are usually a reflection of the author. And a lot of the best conflicts in the book and lessons in the book are lessons that you've learned yourself. So let's say you did fail. If you were to put out that book with your failure in it, it would sell like hotcakes.
Yeah.
He was just like, at all times you need to find something that you can look forward to, and even if you did fail, there are plenty of people with a dishonorable discharge who have made it big in life. It just means don't go for government jobs.
I feel like it's important to know not everybody is suited for the same type of job.
Yeah.
Like me, I would do amazing in the military.
I feel like you would.
If I didn't have the health issues, I would have been in the military.
Yeah.
And I'd have been a lifer, and I'd been there, and I'd been happy. But not everybody thinks the way that I do. Not everybody is so, like...
some people are very... I consider it kind of drone-like, but...
Rude.
It's a switch.
Yeah. But I get that. I'm very good at monotony, I guess. I like knowing what I'm doing. So if I go in, I'm like, oh, okay, here's what I have to do for the day, and I do it every day, then I can get better at it for me. That's just how I work.
I like passion.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want a job that makes me feel like it's not just monotony, that what I'm doing is actually helping somebody, or helping me, or I'm creating something that people will be interested in.
Yeah.
So I want something that either inspires or genuinely helps. And my job was not.
No.
I worked in optometry. So I didn't feel like I was helping anybody. But he said to me, he was just like, he felt like what my biggest problem was is, for one, he said I had DID.
DID is, what is it now?
Disassociative identity disorder. But back in the day...
Basically, it's multiple personalities.
Yeah.
Some people have a plethora of personalities. You have two, right?
I believe.
There's old Yahk and young Yahk, basically, is what it is. And how did that make you feel when you finally got that diagnosis?
It was explaining, for one, my memory lapses, because I was having a lot of memory lapses. I was forgetting a lot of things.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
And for two, a lot of people would say at some points, it seems like I know exactly what I'm doing, and I got the job down, and I'm smart as heck. And then at other points, I seem like an absolute idiot, and that I'm not getting the point whatsoever, and I'm acting like a child. And to be honest, it was explaining.
Yeah, it explains a lot.
And both are capable of doing the job. It's just
one knows the job, and one's like...
The other one knows the job too, just doesn't want to do it.
Alright, let me put this this way. He and his friends like to call it old Yahk and young Yahk. I, on the other hand, like to call it mean Yahk and nice Yahk. Because mean Yahk did not like me at first.
From what it sounds from her, I need to go get seen for it more, but that he may have spawned from fear. He may have came from fear. a constant state of fear, and he was there to protect me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, so that's generally, quick little insert about the little bit of research that I've done on DID. Obviously, I don't have it, so there's not so much that I can say from first-hand experience. But from the stuff that I've read into, DID is usually presented because you have childhood trauma. I think it's over 97% of people who have DID also had past childhood trauma. And it's usually a way, it's almost always, which again, it's like in the high 90s percents, that the reason for it is to protect one or more of the personalities. Some people will have, I mean, there's been some who had about 15 plus personalities, and they're just constantly switching. Sometimes there's a trigger for it, sometimes there isn't. The trigger can sometimes change, depending, even for the same person. Hey, this thing triggers me. Well, sometimes this other thing will too. So it's really about looking at what triggers you. From what I've read, that's probably the hardest part, and the best thing that you can do is to just kind of figure out what your triggers are, and not necessarily try to avoid them, but learn how to manage them. The biggest part of DID is learning to manage, not avoid. We're not Elsa in this bitch. You don't avoid fear, you manage it.
What's it? As somebody who supposedly has it, because I was diagnosed with it, I don't know how to explain how it feels. It just, it makes me sometimes feel like I don't know how I'm going to react in a situation.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to be very patient about it, or I'm going to seem guarded and suddenly
angry.
Yeah.
a lot of times, mistrust and fear also come out as anger.
Lucky for me, it will never come out with children, because I don't fear children.
Well, you're like 4 times their size, so yeah.
I don't fear children. So usually with them, they love me. And if it were to come out with them, it would be to protect them.
Yeah.
But after I was diagnosed with that, he left me with the wise words of, it seems like you're allowing yourself to feel too much of either emotion. When something really bad happens to you, you bathe yourself in it, and you become massively upset from it, almost like you're bipolar, but it's worse. He says, and when something happy happens, you try to take it in as much as possible, because all you want to do is feel happy, and you make yourself crazy happy. But the problem is with that is whenever you make yourself feel the extremes, when the other emotion comes back around that is the opposite of whatever you're feeling, you feel it even harder.
Yeah.
So if you're in a really, really deep, sad spot, and you're really, really sad, when something happy comes around, and you're a person who feels emotions very sensitively, you grab that happiness and try to feel it as much as you can.
Yeah, and then once,
but the problem is
comes,
when the bad comes back, it hurts even more.
Yeah.
And it puts you in a super low spot. So he was just like, learn to be in the middle. Imagine the yin yang. And he was just like, be on the S. Don't be on the fish. And he said, be in the middle and try not to get caught by either fish.
Yeah.
He said, yes, feel happiness. Yes, feel sadness. But don't bathe yourself in it. Acknowledge that you're feeling it, but allow space in the future for something else to happen.
Balance.
Yeah. And so every time I'm in a super happy situation or a super sad situation, I make sure to calm myself down. Do not allow myself to become riled in anything. Yes, I will let you know that I'm happy, and I'll show the happiness on my face. I'll show the giddiness. If you've seen any of our reactions, you'll see when I get happy. Clearly, I feel it.
Luke Skywalker, anybody?
Like, that was lit. But I will never allow myself to hit the extremes.
Yes. Sorry.
And because of that, it felt like things were moving smoother for me.
Yeah.
Because I think it was
because you weren't letting your emotions control you.
Yeah. And I think that was the biggest thing. I had to control my emotions. And ever since I've been doing that, things have started getting a little bit better. I still have sleep problems. But because I'm with her, and also me trying to fix myself, I figured out ways to get around that. I still struggle with it. I actually still struggle with it a lot. At work, they definitely notice that I struggle with it. But it's way better than what it was in Japan.
Yeah. So, okay, looking at that, looking at the LPOs that you had when you were in Japan and the LPOs that you have now, mentally, how has that affected you? Just looking at your LPOs and how they've handled certain things.
LPOs in Japan, the first one was a good LPO. His patience is what kept me going, and his willing to listen to me. And he had this level of understanding. He said, "Bro, he says, as long as you're not like, work starts at 7. Normally we ask you to come in at like 6:30, 6:45. As long as you're there before 7, it's cool. And if you're not there before 7, call me before 7 and tell me what's wrong.
Yeah.
And as long as you do that, you're good." So I was good with him. The other LPO didn't really care. I could have called him for whatever reason. He just saw it as another excuse, or I was messing up again. And the LPOs now that I have, for the most part, think like the first one. Though they're not as patient when it comes to like call and tell me what's up. They want you to call and tell them what's up, but
you're still gonna hear about it.
You're still gonna hear about it, and you're probably gonna get some flack from it.
Yeah.
Just not as much flack. And I'm okay with that. I'm gonna be honest. Don't let something go unpunished.
Yeah, you don't want somebody to get complacent or lazy.
Yeah, don't let them get like that. It's okay. Punish whenever they mess up, but let them know that you're trying. Let them know that you're like, I'm patient, I'm understanding, I'm working with you.
Yeah.
And that's all a person who's having issues, that's what they need to hear. Let them know that you're patient. They're working with you, and they understand what you're going through, and I'll keep listening, and I'll keep working through all the problems that you're speaking of to help fix them. Because clearly, people with mental health are not always going to be able to fix it by themselves. That's the big thing, is that they expect you.
Yeah, I'd say
they expect you to fix yourself, and that's not how that works.
So the hardest part of having a mental illness is sometimes you're so caught up in your head that you don't even notice the things that you're doing sometimes. And so it does take that person on the outside to basically be like, hey, here's what I noticed that's going on. And so, I mean, it took me going to, a therapist who was completely unbiased because they didn't know much about me, to kind of like, I see this thing happening, and I was like, oh, yeah, no, that makes total sense. I mean, I like to pride myself on the fact that I'm pretty self-aware. I like to think, I mean, obviously, maybe the fact that I think that makes me completely unself-aware. But I like to do a lot of internal thinking on myself. And you can probably speak up for this. I'm always constantly asking, hey, here's this thing I'm noticing. Is it really something that I'm, like, is it really me? Am I going crazy? Or, hey, what's one thing that you think that I can work on? I'm not always the best.
Me neither am I.
I'm not always the best at taking that advice. But I try. And I feel like that's the thing that people don't understand, especially those who don't have a mental illness, is we can't do it on our own. We can try and we can do our best, but there's so much that we don't see because we're not on the outside looking in.
Let's get this correct. I'm not saying we can't be independent.
No, that's not what we're saying.
We can be very independent.
But we need help.
But if you want to fix the mental health, some people don't even understand what it is.
Yeah.
So you need somebody who's trained, who can tell you, who can let you know what the hell is going on.
So it's important to make sure that you have somebody. And I mean, it's best if it's a professional. I really feel like everybody should go and see a professional at least a couple times.
Yes, but you also need a friend. You need somebody.
But you need that person you can rely on outside of your therapist, who spends time with you outside of a therapist's office and sees how you are. What you see is not always the reality. And so it takes that person being on the outside to then be the reality, so to speak, and to kind of, you know, it's that whole the memes with the expectations versus reality. Sometimes it's expectations, reality, my own reality. What I view as happening. It's that meme. It's like what my mom thinks I'm doing, what my coworkers think I'm doing, what I think I'm doing, what I'm actually doing. You know, and so many things are relative. There's a reason. There was a movie a while ago. I don't remember how long. It was a while ago. And it was basically, I think it was called Point of View. But it was like the same situation, just from different points of view. And each person only got a little piece of it. So it wasn't until they put everything together then they realized what happened. I never actually watched it. It was something I was really interested in. But it was, watch it. Yeah, we definitely should. I'm totally down for it. But I think it was like an assassination or something. And they had different people's, like, actual camera point of view. Because it was like a parade or something big. So everybody was videoing it. And so, yeah, it's definitely a movie you should check out. It definitely helps you kind of realize that what you see is not always what's really happening. And as somebody who has a mental illness, it's important to have those other points of view.
Yes, because what we see might not be what's actually happening. But also you need to remember it's the other way around when you're looking at a person with a mental problem. Yeah. What you see might not be what's actually happening. You need to know them.
Well, let's just use, I mean, our most recent miscommunication is, you know, you would say something which normally is okay for you to say, for you to joke about. But when I'm already in a certain mental state and you go about that, I don't always see it the same way as I would a normal way. So the way that I perceive it makes me then react differently than I normally would. And so it's just,
believe it or not, it's not that easy to deal with. Still learning.
Well, and that's the thing. They expect us to instantly be perfect.
Yeah.
And to instantly be cured. One, there's no cure for depression. Even some medicines that are for depression make you more depressed. I was actually, so technically, I was diagnosed with situational depression. So, I mean, that kind of gives it away. My depression usually depends on what's going on around me and how my brain takes in all that information. So, yeah. Whereas, like, yours is, I mean, DID it kind of just throws it in.
DID, anxiety, and adaptive disorder.
So it's just, the hardest part is that society expects you to act as if you were perfect. Nobody's perfect. There are people who are closer to it than others.
I'm perfect in other people's eyes. Because I've definitely seen that.
You're perfect in my eyes, baby.
And you are in mine.
But it's just, they expect you to act like you don't have a mental illness, even though you do have a mental illness, and it's like,
that's some Joker shit right there.
Right?
What's he say? The funniest thing is that when you have a mental illness, they expect you to act like you don't. Yeah. And that's not how that works. That's not how that works at all. And the way the world is right now, I mean, we're adapting, we're changing.
We're trying.
But if, let's say the world would never change again, and we stayed exactly how we were, you're going to make some monsters.
Yeah.
You're going to make some people that, if you had just tried to see things from a different point of view, you could have stopped a lot of bad things from happening.
Yeah.
And I don't mean they kill a bunch of people. Maybe
it's just themselves.
He's the next fucking Einstein. And because of how you treated him, he killed himself, and now we'll never have floating cars.
It's important. I think that's what I want everyone to walk away from this right now. Especially those who are in a form of leadership. Any kind of form of leadership.
As a military member, if you're in a form of leadership, you need to know your people. You need to make sure you know them head to toe, and whatever they're willing to tell you mentally. You need to be the equivalent of the next counselor if you're going to be a true leader to a group of people. Because you need to know their flaws. You need to know what makes them mess up. You need to know what motivates them. Because if you mess around and have a sailor or a soldier that you don't know, and he does some crap that you assume was because of whatever reason, and you mess him over, you're gonna screw over the mission.
Yeah.
And that's not gonna be good.
Yeah.
and in real life, because not everyone is mission focused.
Yeah.
In real life, if you have a family and the heads of the family, your two parents, you need to know your kids and know your spouse. You need to know them head to toe. Know what bothers them. Know what sets them off. What shuts them down. Know all of it. Instead of seeing things from your point of view, you need to see it from every point of view.
That's the biggest thing. Especially people who are in any kind of form of leadership, you need to be open. And a lot of people these days they're opening up. No, don't get me wrong. People are finally starting to open up. But so many people, especially the older generation, and I'm sorry to say that, but
they were raised differently.
It's just, you're just raised different. And a lot of people are very closed-minded. I used to be extremely closed-minded about certain things that I am now like, oh my gosh. It's like that.
You make yourself
that whole version from Endgame? Yeah, Endgame, where he like sees the
Hulk who's hulking out and smashing stuff.
And he just like,
oh god. Oh god.
Yeah. So it's just but yeah, I mean, and that's another important part is we need to be accepting of those people who were previously closed-minded and are now starting to open up.
If they were once a racist jackass and now they're changing, yes, don't 100% trust them right away.
Yeah.
But be willing to trust them and try to see that they're trying to change.
Yeah,
and support them in that.
All you're going to do is just make them revert back to how they were, and they're going to be like, see?
See? You done proved my point.
Wow, okay. That mental link right there. But yeah, no, it's... I just want to walk away with... I just want that to be what you guys walk away with. Be there, be understanding, know your people.
Know your people. That's what we need to lead it off right there. Know your people.
Alright, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Maybe you learned something. Other than that, just go out there, be safe, and do what you need to do to make yourself happy. We'll talk to you guys later.
Hey.